Let's set the scene. It's December 2016 at a holiday market in Berlin. String lights are twinkling overhead. Vendors are serving up steaming glasses of mulled wine and hot apple cider. Everyone's bundled up and cozy in their parkas. I'm there on my honeymoon with my husband, who I just married a few days ago. And as we clink our glasses of Glühwein and gaze into each other's eyes, I logically know that I should be overwhelmed with love for this man that I've just pledged to spend eternity with. Instead, what's going through my mind is an absolutely terrifying thought. What if I don't really love him? I started getting these weird thoughts a few months before we got married. I remember being at the caterers in Williamsburg and tasting all this delicious food, but feeling sort of ambivalent about what we fed our guests or whether the appetizers were served plated or family style. My ambivalence freaked me out because as far as every piece of wedding-related media had told me, I, the bride, was supposed to be bursting with excitement for my upcoming wedding. What did it mean that I felt nothing as we tasted potential desserts? And as we did our engagement photo shoot in Central Park, what did it mean that I felt awkward and unnatural kissing my fiancé for the camera? What if it all meant I secretly didn't want to marry him? Once that terrifying question had crossed my mind, a billion others followed. As a chaotic bisexual, I wondered if this was a sign that I'd secretly rather marry a woman. As a chaotic Canadian, I wondered if this was a sign that I was secretly using this man to get a green card. To any immigration agents in the audience, that was a joke. The terrifying thoughts consumed me so much that I started to lose touch with the physical world around me, especially when I was with my soon-to-be husband. I felt like I was trapped in a thick glass box that muffled my surroundings, made it so that all I could think about was whether or not I really loved the man that I was weeks away from marrying. Bad feeling when you're weeks away from marrying someone. I was 25 years old, and for the first time in my life, I got professional help. I found a kind, insightful therapist who chalked up my symptoms to my discomfort with the wedding industrial complex and assured me I'd feel better as soon as the wedding was over and we were headed off to Berlin for our honeymoon. But I didn't feel better on our honeymoon at all. I felt worse because I was still having the same distressing thoughts as we were sipping our Glühwein at the holiday market, but now my husband and I were legally bound to one another. If my thoughts were true, it meant we'd have to get a divorce. And I didn't want to get a divorce. Or did I? Were happy newlyweds supposed to be thinking about divorce this much? The trip was 2 weeks long. We went from Berlin to Prague to Vienna and then back to Berlin. And I honestly don't remember a lot of it because I was so trapped in my own head, wondering how anyone who claimed to love their husband could be this incredibly anxious on their honeymoon. The constant doubt kept tormenting me when I got home. I was desperate to put my worries at ease, to prove to myself once and for all that I did love my husband and that I'd made the right choice in marrying him. Whenever I smiled or laughed around him, I mentally calculated how real it felt. Whenever I looked at him or touched him, I mentally tried to measure my attraction to him. I even analyzed old photos of the two of us, trying to figure out if I'd really been happy in the moment or if I'd just been faking it for the camera. These mental rituals occupied my every waking hour, to the point where I was dissociating at work, with my friends, and worst of all, with my husband, which only made me doubt my love for him even more. Naturally, I was terrified to tell my new husband that I was constantly thinking about the prospect of divorcing him. But eventually, I couldn't keep it in any longer. I remember breaking down in our bedroom. I'm sobbing in his arms, explaining that I logically knew I loved him, but that my deviant thoughts must mean that I was doomed to ruin his life. Luckily, my husband works on a special operations team that responds to like the worst emergencies in the tri-state area. So him coming home to his wife having a panic attack that she'd secretly conned him into a marriage was only like the 8th worst thing that he'd seen that day. He was remarkably not worried about the future of our marriage, although he was worried about me. He hated seeing me so unwell, and he encouraged me to keep talking to my therapist. Now, eventually, my therapist started to realize what was actually going on with me. I just returned from a trip to the Adirondacks with my husband and his family, and I told her that I'd essentially had a week-long panic attack about our relationship. And this time, she tried a new tactic. She said, you know, you might end up having to get a divorce. And I started crying, but Tiffany, I don't want to get a divorce. And she said, exactly. People who want to divorce their partners generally aren't sitting in my office sobbing because they don't want to divorce their partners. My problem wasn't that I'd been faking my love for my husband. My problem was that I had obsessive-compulsive disorder. So here's what I went on to learn about OCD. As humans, we have a lot of weird thoughts that pop into our heads on any given day. You could be standing on the subway platform and randomly think about a person falling into the train tracks. Someone without OCD might be like, that was a weird thought, and get on with their day. A person with OCD might not be able to rest until they got to the bottom of why they had that thought. Does it mean I secretly want to jump into the tracks? Or that I secretly want to push someone else into the tracks? Am I a murderer? Do I secretly want to kill my loved ones? Is it dangerous for me to have knives in the house? Maybe I should just avoid other humans for the rest of my life. It's fun, right? Yeah. To cope with these intrusive thoughts or obsessions, people with OCD perform physical or mental rituals called compulsions. It could be compulsive hand washing or organizing the home in a certain way. Those are the kind of compulsions you probably imagine when you think about OCD. But compulsions can also look like mine, where they take place mostly inside your head. You know, replaying memories, analyzing your own behavior, stuff like that. Now, compulsions can bring momentary relief, but it's like sand slipping through your fingers. The relief never lasts. What I learned by doing cognitive behavioral therapy is that the only actual way to fight the anxiety produced by intrusive thoughts is to resist performing compulsions. Instead, you acknowledge the scary thought and then do nothing. You sit in that discomfort and get used to it. Over the next few months, I got serious about learning to manage my OCD. I sat in so much discomfort that I thought I was going to explode. And then, like magic, the anxiety started to subside. A weird thought about my marriage didn't send me into a tailspin like before. It was just a weird thought, and that was that. Those uncomfortable feelings I had during the wedding planning process, I probably was uncomfortable with the wedding industrial complex. Do you know how awkward it is posing for photos in the middle of Central Park? And how expensive catering is? I wasn't into that stuff the way brides are told they should be, and that's fine. It wasn't a sign of something deeper. My brain just told me it was, and because of my OCD, I believed it. Now, if you've ever taken a red-eye flight to Europe, you know that what often happens is you arrive super exhausted in the morning, but your hotel room isn't ready until later that afternoon, so you have to drag your weary corpse around the city feeling like garbage. That's what happened to me and my husband on the first day of our honeymoon. Of course I wasn't feeling pure, unbridled joy to be a newlywed. I wanted a nap. And to make things worse, we decided to fill this awkward period of time by going to the weirdest museum ever, a natural history museum with floor-to-ceiling jars of pickled aquatic creatures. So I need you now to picture me trudging through this dimly lit chamber known as the wet room, looking at jars of preserved octopus eyeballs and squid beaks. And because I'm not 100% enjoying my honeymoon, it must mean that I'm some kind of deranged bisexual who conned an innocent man into a green card marriage. No. There are some silver linings to having OCD, though, I should say, especially as an author. Because I'm so obsessive, I've never missed a deadline. And when something doesn't feel quite right about a draft I'm working on, it's basically impossible for me to step away until I've figured out what's wrong and how to fix it. Before I finally decided to quit my day job in magazines last year and dedicate myself fully to writing fiction, I would get an offer on a novel and then have 3 months to turn around that first draft while working my full-time job. When faced with the uncertainty of how the hell I was gonna do that, my brain was like, no problem. The draft has to be a minimum of 60,000 words, so that's 20,000 words a month, which is 5,000 words a week, and if I write 300 words on the subway to and from work every day, that's 1,500 words done by the weekend, which only leaves 3,500 words to split between Saturday and Sunday. Easy. And I wrote 5 novels in 5 years that way with a full-time job, including The Revenge Game, which is going to be on sale after. Yeah, thank you. So to celebrate our first wedding anniversary, my husband and I decided to go back to Berlin, a sort of honeymoon redo now that I had more of a handle on my OCD. Of course, I felt so much pressure to make it perfect, but I found that once I accepted that it wasn't going to be perfect, that sometimes I was going to be tired and not feeling perfectly in love, and sometimes I was going to be sitting in a German sauna with 20 sweaty strangers and wondering if I'd secretly rather be married to one of them, I enjoyed it so much more. Because that's life. We'll never have 100% certainty about what's going to happen tomorrow, and we'll enjoy today so much more if we stop trying to figure it out. This past December, my husband and I celebrated our 8-year wedding anniversary. And in March, we'll have been together for 15 years. Somehow, he never once considered divorcing me throughout this ordeal. Shout out to Tim. Thank you. Woo! My life's been great since my OCD diagnosis, not because it's been perfect, but because I'm sitting in the discomfort of knowing perfection doesn't exist. Or what if it does? What if I don't have OCD at all and my worst thoughts are true? What if I get canceled for faking my OCD on the stage at Joe's Pub and I never sell another book? And listen, you guys, I have some stuff to think about. I hope you have a great night.